Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Remember to use the promo code DNVR20 on your first purchase to get 20% off, DNVR25 for 25% off. That CBD-infused, deliciously rich, and potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I'm your host, Drew Creasman. I'm the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. With me, as always, is beat writer Patrick Lyons. And on this show, we are very excited to bring on a guest, somebody whose work I've been a fan of for a very, very long time. From Colorado Public Radio, host of the award-winning series Back from Broken, and a big Colorado sports fan and Rockies fan as well, Vela. How are you, man?
You guys, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're also doing well because there's baseball being played. Spring is in the air. Perhaps a return to normalcy. We know you got your COVID vaccination going. So hey,
first one today, man. First vaccine today. Next one's a few weeks. It was surreal. Like, my parents got vaccinated last month, and I was just, that's all I cared about. I'm like, I just need mom and dad vaccinated. If I had to stay indoors for another year, so be it. But I just need my mom and dad vaccinated. But then when the governor moved up certain things in the order and I became eligible, I believe it was Friday, it's like, and then you try and you make an appointment, right? And that's kind of tough. But then I was literally watching The Crown, which, by the way, we could also talk about The Crown for like days if you guys want. But I was watching The Crown last night, and I was like, I'll just see if there's an appointment on Safeway. Safeway had an appointment, and so I got vaccinated.
I would not mind talking about the Royals, but this is a Rockies related show, so maybe we shouldn't dip our toe in that water. But Back from Broken is your podcast. Season 2 did just get started back up. I listened to the Andrew Zimmern episode, which was fantastic. I'm familiar with his work on the food shows. Sarah Benincasa is the most recent one, and this has been a labor of love, a labor of it's your life. It's your life story. Tell us a little bit about the story of Back from Broken and the genesis of it all, and where that inspiration came from.
Well, I tweeted just today. I said, I'm coming on your show to talk about two of my favorite topics. One is baseball, and then the other one is recovery. And as you guys know, recovery is very close to my heart. It's very near and dear to me. There's a lot of people out there, and I felt like them for a long time, where you just feel all alone. Like you just feel like there's no other way to live except the wrong way. But you keep living that way because it's the only life you've ever known, right? Like I would always tell people, how you guys brush your teeth every day. That's how I did cocaine. Like I just did it every day, and I didn't even think about it because it became so ingrained in what I did every day. And cocaine is expensive, and and when you're doing it every day. And when you're a journalist, right? Journalists don't make a ton of money to begin with. So it's amazing that I wasn't living on the streets. I mean, thank God I wasn't, but I did wreck a lot of things in the process, right? Like there was, I ruined finances, I ruined relationships and health and all this stuff. And you burn bridges because when you put drugs before anything else, everything else is a distant second. And when that happens, you're bound to burn bridges, and it's a painful existence. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but the reason why I'm able to talk about this stuff is because I don't live like that anymore, and I've gone through recovery. I'm still in recovery, and anything I can do to shine a light on this issue of addiction and how we can get better and help other people out there not feel so all alone. There's some magic in that. There's some magic in when someone tells their really sad story where they've gone through hell in their life, and you hear that story and you hear your story when someone else is telling theirs. It's a really powerful thing. And then you could say to yourself, wow, I don't feel alone anymore. And if this guy can get better, maybe I can get better, right? And so that was the whole foundation that Back from Broken was born. It was, I wanted to, you know, two things I know about a lot is being a public radio host and being a drug addict. And I'm like, what can I do to share those experiences? You know, the know-how of being a host in news and the know-how of being someone who's gone through addiction. And that's when Back from Broken came to my mind, and I couldn't let it go. And I told my news directors about it, you know, 2.5, 3 years ago, and they loved it. And the rest is history. And I'm really proud of what we've accomplished so far. It's been terrific.
Yeah, I'm really glad you put it that way, because I think that comes through. And I can see some people, though, if you are hesitant to listen to Back from Broken, I always think about this, like, why would somebody not get into something this good? I think, well, they might think, well, I've never had addiction, or maybe I don't know anyone who has. And there's actually something very powerful at the end of the Jake the Snake Roberts episode. Patrick and I are huge wrestling fans. We know that's another thing that we could do a whole conversation about, where he says, you do know somebody struggling with this, and there's something that you can probably do to reach out and help them. But there's something that you said at the end of your own personal episode that really resonated with me, and you said it again just now about coming back from being alone, that I feel like, and because I found myself really resonating with both of those stories that are quite a bit more intense than mine. But I spent a lot of my 20s feeling very alone, being very isolated, probably drinking a bit too much. And it, you know, it wasn't a certain way, but I found myself saying, and then you said something about, you know, mental illness and anxiety and addiction and recovery isn't just about substance abuse all the time. And that's one you talk about a lot, but there's also just this notion you said a second ago, feeling alone. I think almost everybody out there at some point has felt really, really alone. And when you listen to these stories and you see how, like you said, people like you and Jake the Snake Roberts and the guys from the Lumineers have gotten through their situations, and you go, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe I'm not so alone. Maybe there's a community of us who can get through this together. It's really powerful stuff.
I mean, that's beautiful. And everything that you said there, I want to touch on a few things, but some of our biggest fans, a large part of our audience are people who haven't necessarily gone through addiction or mental health issues themselves, but know someone close to them. And the show helps them get to know a loved one who is struggling. And that's the most frustrating thing, man. Like I say this all the time, like it's hard, obviously, living life in addiction, but it was much harder for my parents. It was much harder for the people who loved me, because they felt so helpless. So many people feel helpless, like my partner can't stop drinking and I don't know what to do, and I can't relate to them, right? Like that's right. I hear that all the time. And so if my show can help people understand what a loved one is thinking, because man, when that addiction takes hold, it grabs on tight. You know, it's like, you know, a dog going after a squirrel, and as soon as it gets your hooks in you, and you know, it makes you do things that you couldn't fathom doing sober. Like I look back and I think about the things that I did when I was high. I'm like, really? I did that? But here's the other thing too. I think that is a surprise to a lot of people when they hear the episodes, is they're actually really funny. Like there's a lot of laughter that goes on because we can relate to each other's stories. And that's a beautiful place to be too, when two people who are in recovery can sit across from each other and tell very painful stories, but then find some levity, find moments of humor. That's a real special place to be when you are so so in a good place with your recovery that you can have a laugh at some of the most painful things that's happened in your life. That's a special place to be, and it can happen. It absolutely can be you. Like, and I never would have thought that when I was smoking crack every day, that I would be helping others. That's the last thing I thought I'd be doing, but this is what I'm doing, and it's a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really is. I think Patrick might be having a few technical difficulties. We'll see if we can get him back in here. But as you said, one of the things that I think is maybe a misnomer about those who struggle with addiction is that it's going to be automatically obvious to everyone around them. And, we talked about the way, professional athletes or a number of other people, and Jake the Snake Roberts, by the way, that is professional athleticism. And there's a few others you talked to on your show, or just professionals. You said something in one of your episodes, and I honestly, I can't remember. I was kind of binging through a lot of them there, but there was something you said about living life every day, the normal things of every day when you're going through recovery, and they expect you, just to be at work on time every day, and all the normal things that just become massive hurdles to try to overcome. And people don't realize that, that's just a totally different part than what they may see publicly. And someone may look fine, like, oh, I had no idea. I thought they were doing great. And there's this whole other struggle. And I found that a running theme kind of throughout all of the episodes.
I mean, you're so smart to pick up on that, because it is, it's a huge thing to know about people in recovery. Like, in many ways, and this may sound crazy to people, but like in many ways, quitting drugs is the easy part, right? You can get sober if someone, handcuffs you to a radiator for a month, right? Like, you can get sober in prison. But the recovery part, where you actually have to look at yourself in the mirror and go through all your dirty laundry from the past to figure out what was driving your drinking or drugging in the first place. That's the hard part. And we call that living life on life's terms. When we get in a car and you're stuck in traffic and you're running late for work, and the other guy gives you the finger because he cuts you off, and the customer service representative is not very friendly, and your boss is treating you like a dick, right? Like, there's everyday stuff that every human goes through, right? It's harder for a lot of us in recovery, because for many of us, we never learned how to behave. Like, I had behavioral issues from when I was a little kid. I was throwing fits in the principal's office. I was getting kicked out of class. I was like, if a teacher or a cop told me what to do, screw you. And when you would have pain and consequences from that, like getting in trouble with the law, like getting in trouble at school, I just drank and did drugs. So I didn't really have to think about it. It was the self-medication. You take away the medication, now you're dealing with the regular stuff that you never learned how to deal with on life's terms. And that's hard. I have a bad temper, and that's something that may surprise some people, but that has been one of my Achilles heels since I was a little kid. Like, I will throw a fit. I will since kindergarten, man. Like, if the teacher didn't let me like color the thing that I wanted to color, she's gonna get a mouthful. And
I bet there are a few journalists who have that story. I was gonna say it sounds vaguely familiar.
But it's so true, man. Like, and then if I lose my temper, dude, I feel so bad. It feels very much like a relapse when I lose my temper, because I kind of feel guilty because I've gone through so much recovery. But you have to give yourself a break. And what you said is exactly right. Like, just because you're done with the drink or the drug doesn't make all of the things that you have upstairs go away. That takes a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that really struck me, again, as somebody who hasn't, I don't think, who knows? I had to miss some time there in my 20s where it was a little bit, I went through some very dark times, and they're not necessarily mine to talk about. It's why I haven't done as much on this show.
But they're your problems though. Like, just because you didn't get as nuts as I did, it was still a problem for you. So yeah.
Right. And ended up, leaving school for a little while. And it's how I got into music and doing those kinds of things. And then coming back out. And I remember writing a line in a song one time about how it felt like there was elation in the world everywhere, except for right here where I am, right? This kind of idea that, like, when you're struggling with something and you don't know who you are. And I think that's that self rebuilding is what almost anyone can identify, unless you just have like the smoothest coming of age story in the history of man. Like, I think we've all had that point where you go, I don't want to be this person that I am anymore. And I think that's what I'm most identified with is, this person that I was. Some very traumatic things happened in my life. I did struggle a little while to be purposefully alone for most of my 20s and just shut everybody out. And then to try to come out of that and say, who do I want to be? And that's part of how I ended up, here in this situation. It's like, I love baseball. That's one of the things I know I care about. Is there some way for me to make that a part of my everyday life in a way that makes sense? And hearing, the way that kind of mirrored your story, I felt like a very kindred spirit in that way. Like, your story is definitely more intense than mine, but the mirrors of the timeline are pretty incredible.
No, and that's a really good point. And I think that's something that, again, even people who haven't gone through addiction themselves can relate to, that struggle to find the meaning of life, so to speak, right? Like, and to figure out who you are. And for a lot of us, that's tough. I mean, think about it. Like when someone has been drinking and doing drugs every day since early high school, they don't know who they are. They just know what the drugs do for them, right? And so, like, figuring it out along the way is kind of tough. That is a beautiful, it is a challenging part of recovery, but it's also a rewarding part of recovery, figuring out that I don't have to be that person anymore. Like the addiction did not define me. It's a huge part of my existence, but it doesn't define who I am. Yeah. The temper tantrums does not have to define who I am. And learning through, allowing a spiritual foundation in my life, not a religious one, but a spiritual foundation in my life, allowed me to kind of understand that stuff and understand that I can just be who I am today, right now. Like, I got vaccinated today. I have a little bit of a headache as far as a side effect. I'm okay with that, right? And then when I'm done, I'm going to make dinner, and I'm okay with whatever happens today. And that's a beautiful place to be, when you can just be okay with whatever the world throws at you today. Yeah.
Yeah, and for people that are in recovery, to put it in a phrase, it's taking one day at a time. Yeah. It's just understanding that you can't get too wrapped up in the future and worrying about certain things, and say, look, today is the day that I have control over. And it's giving away control, but it's also understanding that you do have control over the present tense, over today.
Yeah, I mean, it's the oldest cliche in the book, right? One day at a time. We've heard it a million times, even if you're not in recovery. But it's brilliant.
Right.
You're able to just, like, I can't tell you guys how many times I'd sit in a meeting and I'd see this, a poor kid struggling, and he's been sober for maybe 1 or 2 days. And he talks about, like, I don't know if I was debating whether I should get sober right now. Like, the Super Bowl party's coming up in a few weeks. My girlfriend's birthday is right around the corner. Like, we have all these, like, mile markers ahead that we point to. And it's like, dude, that is weeks or months or whatever. Like, dude, all we need to do is look at 2020 last year and see that months can be an eternity, like in terms of what happens in the world. If months is an eternity to us, when you're just trying to get through the day sober, months is an eternity. As you have no business thinking that far ahead. You have no business thinking a week ahead. It's like, what are you going to do today to treat yourself better, to treat others better, and to get through the day sober? That's all. Those are the only things you had to worry about.
Has there been a moment in you doing this show, again, back from broken? You're all listening to this on a podcast app right now. Unless you're joining us live on YouTube, do try to join us live on YouTube. It's great. It's awesome. And you can ask questions and stuff. But almost everyone's listening to this on a podcast app right now, which means you can go and find Back from Broken, CPR, Big Vela. It's all right there. Check it out. Has there been a moment that either really surprised you during all of this, or that made you think, okay, yeah, this is why I did this. These were the stories I wanted to tell. This is the kind of moment that I think is going to resonate with people.
Well, I mean, I've had a lot of special moments.
I was going to say it's a sports show, so we're like, pick your top number one. Like,
I know.
you can pick a few, right? Power rank,
Starting with
5 to 1. Give each one of them a BWAR rating. And
I can tell you though, my personal favorite episode was Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yeah.
I grew up. I have a few years on you guys, so I grew up during the prime of wrestling, the golden age of the 1980s, dude. Like Hulk Hogan.
No, you're right.
Vic, I hate to interrupt you. I was at WrestleMania 4.
Whoa.
Yes, Macho Man going over in the tournament.
In the tournament in Atlantic City at Trump Hotel.
I'm from Jersey, so this guy knows. He knows it. One man gang getting a pass because of a draw. Oh man, it was good times.
That was like WrestleMania 4 was really good. Like, because you had like the ultimate like Macho Man like somehow survived all of his matches, and he was getting his ass kicked. And $1 Million Man like is the ultimate asshole who everyone hates.
Yes.
And is super entitled, and of course he gets like a bye, and and Andre the Giant is cheating, and it's amazing. So I grew up with that stuff, like when I was like a little kid, and so, dude, I remember what it was like seeing Jake the Snake Robert. I mean, what a badass! Like he's carrying a python to the ring.
Right, no way to fake that.
Right. And he's just like he kind of frightened me too, because his like promos were super dark and intense, right? Like he was not a chump. And so I remember that, but then it was really something. I don't even know how many years later, decades later, when we can, I mean, I couldn't, as a journalist, as in public radio, and a guy in professional wrestling, you couldn't think of two totally different lives, right? But the common bond was our addiction. And when we had a chance to talk about that thing that we shared, it was really special. And he was the ultimate example. Like he's an extreme case of, my God, there was child abuse, sexual abuse, and then everything, all that crazy stuff that happens in pro wrestling. He is the ultimate poster child for, if that guy can get sober, what's my excuse, right? Like, wow, if Jake the Snake can stop that. So he was absolutely, yeah. And then, but we haven't heard, you'll hear this season, one of the episodes we did was with this, a teacher from Louisville, Kentucky, who struggled with alcoholism. And we chose her because she's a good example of someone who is still in the struggle. And I think a lot of people can relate to her in terms of the relapses, in terms of the hospital visits, in terms of just struggling to get it right. And I think that's an important story to tell too. Not just someone who has years of recovery, but someone who is still figuring this out. Anyway, so we shared a bond that we'll be sharing this season. And I became emotional during the interview. It's actually amazing. That doesn't happen more often, but when you have that connection with someone and they tell you something powerful and it causes you to be overcome with emotions, man, that's the ticket there. Yeah.
Yeah. With going back to Jake the Snake, it was, as you said, if he can figure it out, we all can, because he did it late in life. He was in his late 50s maybe, and he's still, he's still battling with recovery and everything. And if you need a different sports example, the Shamiqua Holtzclaw episode I thought was a fantastic one, and just how she, basically came to the conclusion that, she has to remove certain bad influences from her circle, and how much that can be a part of maybe the relationships you have and the friends you have become part of your identity. And then if you want to change that aspect of addiction, then that means changing your group of friends and your circle that you surround yourself with. And that can be one of the hardest elements, I think, preventing some people from making that choice.
That's exactly right. That is a really smart observation, Patrick, because that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Like, okay, maybe I'll get sober, but my friends are cool. And it's not to say that you're going to totally ditch these people. Like with me, sure, I had some bad influences that I couldn't hang out with them anymore, but most of my friends were really good, loving, caring people. I was the bad influence. I needed to stop, right? They needed to stop hanging out with me. But in a lot of cases, that is true. You really do have to kind of say, guys, I'm sorry. I need to take care of myself for a bit. It doesn't have to be permanent. It doesn't mean that you're never going to hang out with these people anymore. But part of that change, part of that recovery is you have to meet people. You have to have a community. And I don't know many people who have successfully gone through recovery on their own. I hats off to you, man. Like, if that's, but I don't know anyone who has done that. Like, we all need help, right? Because, and I needed someone who I can go to Broncos games with sober. I needed someone who I could go to Rockies games with sober, go to Fish concerts sober, right? Like, all the things that I love doing, having that, and then, you go play basketball with some sober guys, and then you have lunch afterward. You have to have the people in your life who are also in recovery. And that is probably my number one piece of advice to anyone who always asks me about recovery. It's like, dude, you need a posse. You absolutely need a posse.
And that's where going to meetings can be so powerful. Yeah. And some people don't realize that, and I have some experience in this world, is that going to, let's say, an AA meeting, you don't necessarily have to say a single thing. There's ones that you can go to where there's a speaker, and you can hear someone else's story. And I've been in those rooms to hear that, and someone's sharing their story, and they're more NA, they're more Narcotics Anonymous than Alcoholics Anonymous, but there's something in their story that I can pull something from an experience and say, okay, that's why I'm here, is for that reminder, is for that element. And like you said, that's your posse. That's the people that you can surround yourself with and know that, okay, these people can also help you get through it. And you can relate to them a lot more than those people that maybe you've known your entire life, because that relationship is based on something different.
And that's you hear one of the phrases that gets tossed around in the rooms a lot, is another one of those one day at a time things where it just sounds way too Pollyanna. But, it's to wait. Well, keep coming back. Yes. And don't leave before the miracle happens. So when I can't tell you like how many times I myself, I'm just not in the mood to go to a meeting. I'm just in a foul mood, but I'll sit here, whatever. And I hear something that somebody says that stirs me in ways that I wasn't even thinking. And I just have a jaw-dropping moment, like, oh my God, what that person just said, I needed to hear right now. That happens, right? In the meetings, that it is really a magical place. Yeah, there's always going to be people who talk too much, people who will try and scold you and wag their finger, and bash the big book against your head. But they do it out of love. Everyone has their own way. If you see past the things that drive you crazy, stay for the things that happen, because there will be things that happen. And that's another piece of advice. Like, it's tough. Like, it is not an easy thing. Going to a meeting for the first time is not an easy thing to do. It's a very brave thing to do. Like, you walk in that door and you're surrounded by strangers. You don't know them from Adam. They don't know you. And you're having a hard time anyway, because you're just trying to be sober for one day. That's brave. But when you do it, it's an incredible feeling. I always tell people, it's like your life can change in ways you can't even imagine. You can't even imagine. And I become emotional when I talk about this stuff too. And I think the thing is too, is like, you just got to give yourself a chance. It's anyone who says, hey, I've been, I don't know if I could get sober. What am I going to do for fun? I hear that a lot too. What if drugs and alcohol are fun? What am I going to do for fun? I would say to them, you're in a recovery meeting right now, dude. When's the last time drugs were fun for you? Right? Yeah. Is it fun going to fucking jail and getting pulled over and like, really?
Right.
Yeah.
You got a weird definition of fun, my man. All right. Well, I can tell you, we can all tell you from firsthand, I guess, first ear experience, that it has won awards for a reason. You've got to check out Back from Broken. Make sure you're following Vic on Twitter. Before we let you get out of here, though, do give us your 1.5 or 2 minute state of your Rockies fandom address.
Oh, man.
Just all of the emotions out as quickly as you can.
Gosh, it's tough. It's funny. In recovery, I don't take sports as seriously as I used to. Man, I'd get in fights at games. Like, I remember Nuggets, Lakers, getting in fights with like full of cocaine and booze and throwing punches. So yeah, I used to take sports way too seriously. But now I just appreciate it, right? Like, I'll still really cheer and root and whatever. But if my team, comes up short, then so be it. Life goes on. That being said, I feel really, really bad for Rockies fans. I just, y'all don't deserve what's happening. All Rockies fans ever do is fill up that stadium every summer. That's all they ever do, right? And all you ask for in return is that maybe your team will be competitive. Maybe your owners will work in good faith to put out a competitive team. Man, I'm a native. I grew up in Longmont, and I can't remember a time, really in any sports, when an entire community felt like they had their heart ripped out when Nolan was traded. Like, we've had some sad moments in Colorado sports history, but I can't remember the last time that the reaction was so emotional, so powerful. I don't know where we go from here. It would be nice if we had some hope, but I don't know. Like, I'm cheering for John Gray. I'm cheering for Kyle Freeland, right? Like, how can you not? And Trevor Story is a special talent, but what do we have? What do we really have right now?
Whole bunch of young guys after that, so we'll find out. If nothing else, self-discovery. That'll be the theme of this episode of your episodes and of this season for the Rockies, because we don't know, right? So,
well, and let me ask you, Jared. Let me ask you guys real quick. You've probably been asked this a million times. The whole boycott Coors Field thing. Would that do any good?
I think it could. I think it could. It would just take so much orchestration, and It would be very hard. I mean, anytime you can successfully boycott a system or organization like that, I think it brings about change. However, how do you get it to be successful is kind of the biggest obstacle. And that's a really big obstacle, especially coming out of a pandemic when people aren't allowed to go outside and do anything. And now they are, what's lesser of two evils. Yeah, lesser of two evils is, you know what, for my mental health, I got to go to a ball game rather than boycotting the Rockies. And I think, to be honest, I think Dick Monfort and his folks understood that was at stake. And you know what, I can kind of get away with things a little bit. That's just being a smart businessman, is understanding, you know what, I have an opportunity here to maybe get away with one to a certain degree.
That's a really good point. And you can't blame fans for wanting to go to a ballpark, for crying out loud.
Right.
It's one of the best in the majors, field. It's amazing how it's held up in the 25 years that it's been around. We've been cooped up in our houses all day. Can you blame people for wanting to take their kid to a beautiful ballpark in June or whenever? And me, like, Coors Field became my new bar. Like, I went to bars every night, right, when I was drinking. Coors Field, I go to a lot of Rockies games, of course, to enjoy the game, but I go there with friends and we just talk. Like, it's just like you're sitting in a backyard and there's baseball and you enjoy it. And that's good for my mental health. That's good for everyone's mental health. And to expect people to do that, it really puts people in a tough position. And again, it adds to the resentment, I think, that a lot of fans feel that their ownership has put them in this situation. Because all fans want to do is be a fan.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's tough. Right. And that's tough. And I know there are fans who are feeling bad about it. It's like, I just want to go to the games and people are yelling at me for not boycotting, and it's tough. And I'm with Patrick. I think it's possible, but super unlikely. And so, I have implored people to take different directions. Email the owner, tell them specifically what you're not happy about. We talked about boycotting on the 28th of every month, or maybe the 4th or 5th, or picking a day every month so you can send the message, because ultimately I don't think you're going to organize enough people to actually make it work. But that doesn't mean you give up and you don't do anything. I think there's clever ways to send the message that this fan base, as you put it, feel like they've had their heart ripped out.
And then if you boycott, then what does that mean? Like, when the Cardinals come to town, or the Yankees, or the Cubs, it's going to be 90. Well, it's overwhelmingly them anyway, but
Right.
It's going to be like 10 times worse, right? Like, in terms of, it's going to be a home game for these guys.
Right.
I don't know what the answer is. My heart is broken for Rockies fans, because I know friends who have season tickets and they don't know what to do. And I feel really bad. I'm like, I don't know. I understand. I don't envy your position.
Yeah. Nope. I wish we'd had the answer to that, but unfortunately, we will continue to watch and do the thing, and look for guys like Brendan Rodgers and Ryan McMahon and Sam Hilliard and Garrett Hampsons, and you mentioned the guys, and you root for the individuals, not the organization. I think that's what you got to do. Right? I
mean, I think you have to. I mean, I was we didn't have baseball in the 80s here in Colorado, aside from, the Zephyrs. But so I grew up a Cubs fan. I think, like a lot of people in Colorado, summer school got out and Cubs games were always during the day before the lights came to Wrigley. And so the Cubs felt like they were my team. They were very real to me when I was second, third grade or whatever. You talk about some bad teams. Like, the Cubs were bad forever, but you still found yourself rooting for Andre Dawson to hit another home run, or Sammy Sosa before you knew better, and Kerry Wood.
Race.
Yeah, like, and that's so. Even though they played on some very bad teams, and didn't get a lot of help from their front office, you still have a lot of great memories, and I hope that's what people like Charlie Blackmon and Trevor Story can do for this generation of Rockies fans. At least give them something that they can remember well, even though they may not be winning a division anytime soon. Yeah.
And I did want to know who you were a fan of. So you said Cubs.
Yeah.
And this is one of the elements that doesn't go away. Sure, the team might not win a lot. You're upset about Arenado, but you're still going to have your favorite players on the team. So when the Cubs were bad there in the early mid 80s like that, did you have a guy that, hey, didn't really get to go to the postseason, but he was still your guy? Who was your favorite player?
Well, didn't go to the postseason. That's a tough one. I was going to my favorite Cubs growing up were Ryan Sandberg and Sean Dunston.
Sean
Dunston,
the Schwanometer. Remember that they would have that?
Yes,
with his batting averages. I love the guy. Fast. Wow, Dunston was fast. I played middle infield through Little League and everything, and I wore 23 because of Ryan Sandberg. So middle infield was always my heart and soul. So I love those guys. They did get to play when the Cubs went in '89. To the playoffs. They didn't last very long, but at least they got there. And then in '98 again, that was when Sammy and Kerry Wood and those guys. Ron Say was another one. I don't remember if he made the '84 playoffs. Leon Durham was an '84 playoff. Yeah, but those are some magical names, right? Like, Andre Dawson was the MVP when the Cubs lost like 90 games.
Right.
It's like, what? But like, he was the Hawk. He was special, hitting 49 homers on a terrible. Why do you even pitch to him?
Right. Why ever? These days,
no one else can hit the ball. Just don't even pitch. He somehow got 49 home runs. God love him.
Damon Berryhill. Yeah. Come on. Is that a name?
That's a name. That is a name. Holy cow. Damon Berryhill. It is too bad Harry never got to see them win, though. That's too bad. Yeah.
Well, like you said, Hawkins, special player. Big Vela, special man. We appreciate your time. Back from Broken, special podcast. It really, really is. You've got to download it, make it a regular part of your podcast rotation there. And perhaps maybe even more importantly than that, share it with friends and family and people who you think, may share this episode on YouTube with people, but share the Back from Broken episodes. Whatever their entry point may be, and they're a music fan who loves the Lumineers like I do, Denver, boom, they've got an episode. They're a wrestling fan, boom, Jake the Snake. You find the way you can share it with people and spread the word, spread the message, spread the love around. It really is. It's a gift, frankly, Vic, that you're giving to the world, and we appreciate you taking the time, man.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Be good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Also, make sure you're following him on social media at VicVela1. What a great dude. I've always wanted to have a long conversation with him. We've chatted on social media over the years, so that I've been a fan of his work. But that was a treat for me.
Oh yeah. I wanted to know kind of what his thoughts on Jake Roberts continuing at AEW. Like he's back. Like he has a role, a positive role in wrestling. Right. David, there was a great episode on a gentleman named David Mellor who's written a book about his career as a groundskeeper, and has had a real interesting story both for the Brewers and then eventually for his hometown Boston Red Sox. That was a great story of redemption. So there's a lot of really great content coming out of Back from Broken. Got to check that podcast out.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt any of that conversation with ads because I thought that might be a little bit insensitive. So let's go ahead and remind you a little bit about some of our favorite sponsors. Of course, Hassel Cattle Company, Wagyu beef that cannot be beat. It's another one of them. I talk about how Strava Craft Coffee has changed my life. Well, Hassel Cattle Company, easy for me to say, also changed my life. It's much better beef, better for you. They treat the animals better. None of the antibiotics and hormones and all that garbage. It tastes way better, which is probably the thing that most people care most about. It's just delicious beef, and it's award-winning hamburgers. I'm a big fan of the ground beef, ground chuck, whatever happens to be on promotional sale right now. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with that. We make chili, we make burritos, all kinds of great stuff you can do. A little bit of a pot pie situation with some ground beef in there. If you're a steak person, they cannot be beat. Wagyu beef from Hassel Cattle Company really is some of the best tasting beef you're ever going to have in your life. I have the open challenge out there, have not gotten one single negative review. I'm probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20, 25 people have been like, Drew, this is delicious. This is amazing stuff. Zero people have said, it was okay. Even I haven't even gotten that. Right.
Nope.
So use promo code DNVR10. You'll get 10% off. And if you do order over $200, you'll get free shipping. Highly recommend you go all in on it. HassellCattleCompany.com. HASSELL cattlecompany.com.
I want people to start leaving notes in the request when they have their order. Say, when is Drew Creasman going to get on TikTok and have his own Hassel Cattle Company cooking show? Because I want to see you making all these. You've been getting into it. You've been mixing it up. I know you've long been a pizza guy, but now you're all into the meat preparation and doing this, that, and the other. You've definitely changed your game up directly in correlation to Hassel Cattle Company.
I am fry up the steaks and stuff. I will say I still leave the ground stuff to the missus. She's brilliant with that stuff. But I can fry up a steak. Okay, I can do that all right. So I'm learning. That'll be good. It'll be one of those cooking shows where everyone's learning along together.
Yeah.
With each other. Now, if you are eating a whole lot of Hassel Cattle Company and you're maybe drinking a lot of Strava Craft coffee, you're having your Breck brews, you're doing that thing, well, you might want to head to Green Mountain Dental. Make sure those teeth are really well taken care of. They're the absolute best, man. You want to go to the dentist. I know I get a little bit of dental anxiety. I know how that goes for those of you out there who, maybe it's been a while. You're like, I really should go, but I don't want to. Nobody really, really wants to, but you got to take care of your teeth. Once you do, you're going to feel so much better, and do it with people who make you feel good. I promise you from personal experience, it makes a big, big difference when they've got you in mind and they're not just treating your teeth like they're working on a computer or something. Like these guys, they'll take care of you. They'll talk to you about sports a little bit. They're in your world. They've been a long time supporter of DNVR. Just 15 minutes outside of downtown Denver over there in Lakewood. Check them out at Green Mountain Dental, and they'll hook you up with a free Sonic Care toothbrush when you schedule an x-ray cleaning and exam. Really no reason not to get those teeth taken care of right now.
We know Allie has been taken very well care of by the Green Mountain Dental folks, and she's had her issues, and they've definitely helped see her through the forest on that in a major way. That's impressive to see what they've been able to do for her.
And last one, since I loaded these up at the end, and again, thank you so much for Vic, but some people who could absolutely probably use a little bit of Green Mountain Dental work. Those are our friends over for the Colorado XOs. Rugby players are known every once in a while to get a tooth knocked loose. You might want to get that checked out. And if, hey, you're going, that sounds like some entertaining stuff. It really is. If you've never watched rugby before, I promise you'll get right on board. The first episode you check out from our guy Colton Strickler on the DNVR Rugby podcast, maybe head over to that section of the DNVR.com if you're a subscriber. Read some of the articles there, get you all up to speed. The Colorado XOs are 1-1 right now, and the Rugby World Cup team is getting scheduled to kick off. Mark your calendars on April 3rd and 10th. Rugby Town, USA, right here in Colorado, man. You want to support this. You want to support sports in your hometown, especially that are going national. Check them out. All that rugby stuff over at the DNVR Rugby podcast.
Yeah, once you get your vaccination, man, you can go out there, be there in person. We're not sure exactly what the numbers are for attendance if and when they do start selling tickets, but we know the Colorado Rockies now increased to 42.36%. I'm not exactly sure of that number, but 42% I think was the digit there. And so, wow, that's really going to be a nice little upgrade there at course. Do you think they're going to sell out every game as far as the percentile?
Yeah.
Pretty easily, huh?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's half is 25,000, 26,000.
Yes, it'll be a little under 25,000.
A little under that. I mean, what do they average? Like when it's bad, when it looks kind of empty in there, that's 30,000 people.
Yes, yeah. Again, on a Tuesday night against the Padres from a couple of years ago,
right.
they're still getting about, it's like
There's 28,000 people in the building.
30,228, and you go, yeah, there's some walking around room, and I think I even saw they're going to have some like $5 seats too that are going to be available, because again, they just want to get you in there, and you're like, yeah, right, that's cool, and that's going to lead to more people wanting to go and being more comfortable, so it's affordable.
Yeah. I'm having many thoughts at once right now. It's cool in one way for sure, at the very least, that, with limited capacity, it's not just going to be dramatic price gouging all over the board. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the secondary market, what that'll look like. Justin Wick,
yeah,
Purple Row, wrote something up today about this idea that, we don't know what the secondary market is going to look like. I know some of the early games in spring training, got to be a little crazy. There was some tickets that were like on a StubHub that you could get some point during the season, but that's because there really just aren't tickets available. So that's a season ticket holder saying, hey, you know what, if you want to go to this game and give me, I don't know, $200 for a seat out in left field, sure, why not? I'll take that bit of a profit. But we don't know that that's going to continue to happen, and if it does, it could be even more expensive than that.
All right, let's finish off on this. The Colorado Rockies did play a spring training game today against the Arizona Diamondbacks again. It's Groundhog's Day. They won 11-4, and the first time really a power display from the offense. A little bit of, that's right, we both got if you weren't on YouTube today, you only found out just now. We both got the rake shirts going on because what do you know? Hey, it's a little early and it's not necessarily indicative of anything. However, the guys who hit the home runs, Brendan Rodgers, his second of spring, and an absolute screamer. He just pulverized that baseball. Ryan McMahon with a home run to straightaway center field. He's going well when he's taking that ball right back up the middle. Trevor Story, no surprise there. The guy can still hit home runs. He's also got 2 in spring training. And then CJ Crone, who had a huge day.
Big day.
Went off. Was just annihilating baseballs out there. So a pretty impressive display from the Rockies offense there that, again, you maybe don't expect to see all the time. But those are guys who none of those guys, is it surprising they've got power?
No. Yeah, it's not going to be too often that we're going to be able to wear the Colorado Rake shirt. So I think that's another reason why we got to get it in now, before the cobwebs develop. Pretty much. But yeah, I love to see that, that especially, coming off the heels of that 1-0 game just the other day where they scored a run without a hit. They were actually able to do that at one point. They finally ended up getting 2 hits over the 7 innings. But yeah, they looked real good. They clicked well, Story, and just his third game, kind of limited action. You don't worry about him. I put out a tweet about Charlie Blackmon now being, 0 for 9, only 1 strikeout. But again, who cares?
Right.
Are we really worried? Are we really worried? And again, these guys are working on very specific things. And for Charlie Blackmon, he's like, okay, look, I'm a veteran for a decade now at this point. So I know what I do well. So I'm not going to have a problem turning on one of those down and in fastballs. I'm going to yank that thing right down the line without fail. So let me work on pitches on the outside portion of the plate. So I'm going to lay off all those, pitch. He could have had 3 home runs by this point in spring on fastballs down and in, but he doesn't need that. Right. He wants to add a different facet to his game. And so that's what these guys work on. And so you take all of it with a grain of salt here and there. As you said, CJ Crone broke out. He was in I think 1 for 13 slump, batting .077. Really, there's not a question if that he's going to hit, but now kind of breaking out in a big way.
His double today, there's 115 miles an hour off the bat. That's spicy stuff. That's
he's a big dude.
Yeah,
he's a big dude, and I think a lot of people are thinking it's Fuentes' job to lose, but I don't know that that's true. Maybe it should be, maybe not.
It's a split time situation, honestly. I think they like both of these guys for totally different reasons, and they're going to try to get the most out of each of them.
I think, and again, it's strange because you put CJ Crone in at first base, he might be more productive than Josh Fuentes offensively. Well, he will be offensively. Defensively, Maybe not. We know how good
Did you
Fuentes
see the
is.
play Fuentes
Gold
made
Glove
today?
her.
Holy
Yes.
cow.
He's a
Ridiculous.
Gold Glove first baseman. If he were to play an entire and enough where we know that sometimes those kind of, end of season defensive awards have somewhat to do with what guys do at the plate, but his defense, I think, is so solid that people would definitely take notice. Because again, you don't see first baseman making acrobatic plays. You never. I mean, go back and look at what Nolan Arenado did as a rookie. Yeah, he did good as a rookie. He wasn't an MVP candidate by any stretch of the imagination. His glove was just so good that people go, get a load of this kid in Colorado. They would be saying that about Fuentes over at first base if they were to give him the job. So it's this catch-22. You go, you know what? Crone, I think, is going to help contribute to more wins for the Rockies. However, if you want the better story and you want the team to, not get those extra 3-4 wins over the course of a season because that's going to improve your draft pick next year, go with Josh Fuentes. Or you do a mix of both. I really do think that they're going to go CJ Crone.
I think they will start with CJ Crone. I think we're going to see plenty of both of them. I get the sense.
Could they trade him?
Crone?
Could they have CJ Crone start?
Sure.
Get their money's worth,
yeah.
Send them off, improve that farm system. We don't see them doing that.
That doesn't happen very often.
I would love it.
It's been several years since, at the very least, I think they've gone into a season thinking that's something they might even consider, right? Which, fair enough.
Right.
But
that's true.
But I wouldn't be totally shocked, but I'm with you. It'd be a little bit like, okay, they don't do this very often. This is a step in a slightly different direction. There's a couple guys on the team who fit that bill, even guys you might really hate to see with a little extra time on it, like Daniel Bard and Scott Oberg are really going, and those guys, you've got a lights out back end of the bullpen on a 73-win baseball team. You might want to move those guys at the deadline.
Well, that brings up a really interesting point about Daniel Bard, a year with the Rockies, and not even, again, we're talking about a shortened season, but whatever. He's he'll always be remembered. He'll always have a special place in the organization's history. But Scott Oberg is a Rocky. When you talk about leadership, after Charlie Blackmon, it's Scott Oberg is number 2, and then you got Trevor Story, John Gray, and both those guys are free agents. So you don't want to lose Scott Oberg, and that would certainly be sad. It's not going to be to the level of Nolan Arenado, but you're going to go, the one guy that you wanted to see around. But you know what? With the stuff going on with his health, and I think in a similar way to David Dahl, where David Dahl, hey, they got nothing for him, but you go, we're happy for David Dahl. We even talked about it on the podcast this offseason. We said, you know what? If they were to move on from him, you'd almost give him a pass to a certain degree. You almost want him to go elsewhere for him as the human being. Not good for the team, but good for him as a human being. I think it would be good for Scott Oberg if he were to go to another destination. So he's a name that I wouldn't think of. Like you said, hey, there's a lot of guys, that you could do. Michael Givens, another guy. Robert Stevenson, still has a couple years of control, but you're not tied to those guys. If you can offload them and create some room in the bullpen for some of these younger guys, improve your farm system, you should do it. But Scott Oberg, you know what? When you think of the health stuff, I'm with you on that. That wouldn't be bad.
It's something to think about. It's something to consider. And another thing to think about and consider that's more fun than who can the Rockies offload is, could this be the Brendan Rodgers? I mean, like again, it's early. But the way he turned on that baseball today, hit it, and everybody in the ballpark knew it was gone the second it left his bat, even though it only got like 15 feet off the ground. Like, and the confidence with which he just turned and jogged the bases, I was like, we haven't seen that guy in MLB regular season yet. We've seen him a little bit at spring training. Right. We've seen him a little bit. We've seen a lot in the minors, honestly. That's what he looks like in the minors. And we saw that and I went, ooh, okay. People are starting to get hyped. This is a thing. I think it could be the year of Brendan Rodgers. I saw everyone up on my Twitter today excited about it. This could be a fun season. I think this is the guy that's going to be the most fun to watch for at least the next couple of months.
We'll go back and think about 2019, and one of the guys that was the most fun to watch was Ryan McMahon, breaking the 20 homer mark. And you go, this is the next guy. And anyone with a pulse said in 2020, McMahon is going to be a dude. And he wasn't. Okay, that's fine. He very well could be a dude this year,
Yeah.
but Brendan Rodgers could go out and have that McMahon 2019 season this year, and you go, all right, there we go. We got the replacement for Nolan Arenado here, and he's still got some more growth to make and whatnot. But you feel a lot better about 2022. Like and that's the thing. Again, we yeah, we're putting pig on a lipstick at times. Yeah, we get it, but there again, in a year from now, we could be thinking a lot differently about this team. Maybe not a lot, like, oh, they're going to win a World Series, but you go, all right, we're a year away from Arenado, and look at what this guy did in 21. Look at what that guy did in 21. They've got a little, free cap space, and they go out and they are able to sign some mid, tier guys. They did with Gerardo Parra before they were ready, and that played out pretty well. They did it with Michael Kadire when they weren't necessarily there. That worked out well when he was healthy. So they could dip their toe back into that free agent market, right?
Yeah. All of that stuff. If the last year has taught us nothing, Patrick, it's that a lot can change in a year.
And there are many shades of lipstick to put on said pig.
That's also correct.
Is that going to be a T-shirt? I think we might have to get Eric to do something with a pig with purple lipstick. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. Well, some of the lipstick can take the form of what we're going to talk about on tomorrow's DFA show. Again, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, but we're going to be talking about upcoming milestones for your Colorado Rockies to break. We know they're not going to be, winning a whole lot of games. Almost certainly the milestone of winning the most games in franchise history, not likely to occur. But there are some pretty fun individual records to be broken by your Colorado Rockies that will almost certainly happen in the coming season. And so it's something to look forward to. It's not as good as wins. No, we understand that. We're not saying that. But we're going to do that sometimes. We appreciate you all coming through. I think it's going to be a fun show.
No, it definitely will. Because think about all the stuff that, the content we created, not just this off season, but the 14-month off season from the pandemic. But we really dove into the history of the Colorado Rockies. It's something that, again, the organization might not do it, but we're going to do it here. And tomorrow's DFA show is going to look at, hey, who are the guys that people are going to be talking about in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time? And you go, hey, this guy has the franchise record for X. Or when you talk about the only players to have ever done this in franchise history, there are guys on this roster right now that have a chance to put themselves in that upper echelon. And that's something that, you can't lose sight of this year. They're going to be the game within the game is can this guy reach this milestone for the Rockies? And that's going to be one of the more exciting things I'm looking forward to this season.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd like to end with this comment, since it just did come in. Appreciate you, from Mr. Jerry, saying, as a recovering heroin addict, I appreciate you guys so much for having this conversation. We need to end the stigma around mental illness and addiction. And I just want to say, I put a little bit of my story in it earlier, talking about my stuff. I didn't want to make it about me, but talking about mental illness is something that I could do a little bit more and better as well. Because you're right. We have to end the stigma around those things and be able to have conversations with this. He finishes, thank you to Vic and DNVR. Love y'all. Back at you, Mr. Jerry. And you're right. Thank you so much to Vic for sharing all that with us. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us. Make sure you're following everyone on social media at Patrick D. Lyons, at Drew Creasman, at DNVR_Rockies. And again, it's at Vic Vela 1 there on Twitter. Make sure you're subscribed to the DNVR.com. You'll get all that written content plus discounts on hats, shirts, masks, bigger beer when you come down to the DNVR bar. And you get access to our private chat room, the Discord channel, where you can share your thoughts on all the sports goings on, everything you need to know or want to know about the Colorado Rockies, but also talking pro wrestling, movies, TV, snowboarding, skiing, hiking, food, anything and everything under the sun. We're all a great big community here, and we're made ever the better when all of you participate in it. And so just thank you all for, again, sharing with us a more serious conversation today, but I think an important and valuable one. So thank you all for continuing to be absolutely awesome out there. I promise you we will continue to be absolutely Patrick Lyons and Drew Creasman in here. And until next time, we will see you at the ballpark.